So to avoid something, you actually have to be awake. You have to have your eyes open, and you have to be completely present with the situation to know if you want to drive through it, drive around it, go under it, over it. It's like a big giant tree going on a line, and I'm not afraid. Like, if I am not avoiding anything, then I'm present with everything.
Welcome to another episode of Hello Me, Unapologetically Authentic with Christine Siona and Michelle Lyle.
So I'm curious about avoidance and what happens when we start to avoid something. Like, what is that? It could be that we're avoiding having a conversation with someone. You know, we know there's some kind of irritant, something feels crunchy, or we just completely know, like, actually, this isn't working for me, but I'm going to avoid that conversation. I know there's a lot of people that don't like conflict. And so we avoid things because we have this thought that if this, then this, like if I actually speak my truth, if I actually bring this to the table and have a conversation, it's going to create this, and then conflict, and I don't want conflict, and then they're going to leave. Like, we get into this grandiose, very extreme thing. Curious about that energy of avoidance, and what is that we're really avoiding? You know, are we avoiding the freedom and the ease and the possibility that we're seeking? You know, there's a lot of people that have both spectrums. They'll be like, well, you're avoiding your awesomeness or your freedom, or, you know, you're avoiding conflict because you're blah, 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 blah. So curious about avoidance and how, when I want to create my life, how do I know I'm avoiding something that actually could take me further, or it's actually not required and I'm not really avoiding it, it's just not necessary? And I think there's a blurry space between, is this necessary or not? Am I avoiding this, or is it really not required? And I think people are maybe lazy in figuring out the difference. And we'll drop the A-bomb. We'll go, oh, you have avoidance disorder. You know, oh, you're just avoiding the conversation to have the freedom you're desiring. Well, maybe actually I'm all good, and the conversation is not required for me to have the freedom I'm asking for. But there's a little ridge in between those that's a little murky. Like, am I avoiding something here, or is it really not required? And I'm just getting distracted by something that I'm trying to avoid, but it's not really necessary.
Yeah, I think it's relevant to the circumstance. Sometimes avoiding is peace. Sometimes not going down that road and saying what you need to say to someone who doesn't want to hear it or wants to fight with you or whatever is more peaceful to not choose that. It's just how that affects you in your day-to-day life. And if you want to know more about avoiding, then dive into the inner landscape, dive into your inner truth and figure out what avoiding means to you, or why you choose it, or what you get out of it if you want to. And if it works for you, that's okay too. And you don't have to label yourself a avoidant personality disorder, because sometimes it's not avoiding. Sometimes it's the better choice. And if you are labeling yourself, you probably already have a clue there's something about you that's not true. The way that you're living is not true, and you want to change that. And if you don't want to change it, then maybe you're talking about it or labeling yourself for a different reason. And that's also something to look at or not look at. What I believe in all these years of working on myself and working with others, if you want to change something, you will do what it takes to change it. If you don't, you won't. And not everybody wants to. Not everybody wants to jump on that path. I have this thing inside of me that I ruminate. I ruminate on everything. I need to get all the way to the core. That's my weird, bizarre, interesting personality. That's who I am. Doesn't mean that you need to do that. We as a collective need to start looking at what we're asking of others and the expectation we have of others and what's actually true for them. So one of the other things that I know is if you're doing something that's affecting me and I don't like it, and I go to you and I'm wanting you to change that behavior to make me feel better, but you're not coming to me saying, I have this behavior, I want to change it. No matter what that conversation goes through, no matter how that path goes, I've told you something's wrong with you and you need to change. And so you're not coming to me saying you want to change that. Change isn't happening in that scenario. It might fluctuate and things might shift, but real change happens when you personally want to make that change and you seek it out because there's something within you you'd like to do different. Avoidance in relationships, avoidance with self, avoidance in circumstances can mean a lot of different things. That the reality is, if you're wanting to get to the root of your own personal avoidance, that is a choice that you make to go inside. If you're not, then it kind of doesn't matter why you do it. And that may be controversial. It might be controversial to say it doesn't matter why you do it if you're not wanting to figure that out. But if you're not wanting to figure it out, what does it matter if you do?
There's something for me about just being willing to be present to the energy that is showing up. So, if I want to know, it's like I move into a new town. So I've spent years living in other countries and places where English is not the first language, where everything is the opposite and backwards and, and then awesome and totally where the hell am I? And when I go into a new place, I am always like curious, like, where am I? What street is this? How do you say that? Where's my landmarks? Like, if I want to get back, if I want to find me, how do I find me? I need to know where I am. And so I think for me, this thing about avoidance and just like, is it required? Is it not required? How will I know if I'm not willing to be with that which is showing up? So if I'm going to avoid something, I actually have to see it. If I'm driving down the road and I don't want to hit a deer, I have to have my eyes open to see the deer so I can avoid it. So to avoid something, you actually have to be awake. You have to have your eyes open and you have to be completely present with the situation to know if you want to drive through it, drive around it, go under it, over it. It's like a big giant tree going on a line, and I'm not afraid. Like, if I am not avoiding anything, then I'm present with everything. And then I could actually intentionally steer my ship on the road I want to be on. And if I'm on a road that's covered with yak poop and llamas and alpacas and tricycles and bicycles, and I want to be on a road that's full of yurts and pagodas and beaches, then maybe I'm not even I'm not even things I have to avoid hitting, but I have to actually get on the right road. This isn't even my road. So there's an interesting flip to that of my eyes might be open. I might be totally aware of my landscape, and maybe my landscape isn't working for me. And I might now be avoiding the pivot that's going to change everything. The path that I'm on right now isn't working for me because it's overloaded with yak poop and tricycles. So there's an interesting paradox for me about how can I avoid something if I can't see it? So then if it's not mine, then it's not my road. Like it's not even on my road. This is your road. You're putting me on your road. Like I don't have yak poop on my road. That's your road. You got a yak poop road, Michelle. I don't. So like, I don't see what you see. But I have to be willing to have my eyes open and look at my landscape and look and being able to listen to what your landscape is saying. Your landscape might say, no, this road is full of potholes, man. We got to get off. And I could be going, I love this road. This is great.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's interesting. Like, I love these comparisons that you made, because I was like, boom, that makes so much sense. Great. That's awesome. And I like, you're driving on a road that's not working for you. Avoiding is seeing a turn that you can take and choosing to stay on the road that doesn't work for you, because you know what's coming next. You're comfortable with what's coming next. And the diversion is completely in the clouds and the dark. You can't, there's fog over there. You don't know what's on the other side of that fog. So sometimes it's easier because you can see the clear path of all the potholes you need to navigate. You've been navigating potholes for hours, so you know how to do that. But then that road's foggy and you're like, I can't see past the fog. I have no idea what's on the other side. I might be driving off a cliff. So that could also be avoiding your life. And when you're ready, you're going to go to the fog and you're going to turn on your lights and you're going to drive slow and you're going to navigate and you're going to stop before you go off a cliff, because you're ready. And as long as you're doing what's working for you, and I say that in the context of, you won't make a change if it's working for you, even if you don't like it. There's something in it that you're getting that you like, that you want to stay there. And there's always another path. There's always a cutoff. There's always a way through the forest. There's always something else you can choose. You got to choose what's working for you. When you're ready, you want to see something different, you'll see it, it'll light up, it'll be there. You'll be like, this is what I've been avoiding. And this is the path to like seeing it and changing it and clearing it.
I have the visual of the movie Up, where the old crank is in his house. And, there's lots going on. Like, he's alone now. His wife has died. He's in this old house, and this like wrangly, tangly little 5-year-old keeps knocking on the door. And then before you know it, he's now got this balloon attached to his house, and the house is floating around, and now he's on a whole different land. So every choice we make is actually, whether we stay on the road and we, are eyes open and looking at where we're at, every choice we make is taking us to another destination. And where that destination takes us is up to us, like, of what type of balloon we're attaching to our house. Or am I digging an underground tunnel to get out of here? Like, we get to choose. And sometimes it shows up in the most subtle way of, you had no idea you had a helium balloon attached to your house in the first place. So in that sense, be willing to be surprised by what you actually can create, whether you even think you're creating or not.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about something the other day, because there's so many, there's so many discoveries, and it's all being broadcast on social media, and it's amazing. And I was thinking the other day that I'm a person who knows myself very intimately, and I have an intimate relationship with my trauma, my past, my history, my inner child. I have an intimate relationship with my recovery. I have an intimate relationship with my healing and my studies and my learning and everything that I've been doing in this lifetime. And yet I don't show up in a situation where I may have done something to alter the connection or hurt somebody's feelings or whatever. I don't show up and say, well, I had all this trauma when I was a kid, so that's why I'm behaving like that. And I noticed that about myself recently. Like, I never thought of it, but I was noticing so many people, who are sharing their issues online, saying, well, I'm like this because of this. I'm like this because of this. And my thought to myself was, if you know that about yourself so intimately, what is stopping you from diving in and taking the path to heal some of those wounds, to engage and respond differently in your situations, versus coming up to your situations and saying it's because of this? And then I saw this post that said, your trauma is the reason, not the excuse, or something along those lines. And I thought, so then I was like, oh, because I ruminate. So I'm like, tell me about me. What do I do? And I thought about that. And I will come to a situation, and you and I know this because we're friends and we have this amazing relationship and we bring things to the table. Sometimes they aren't easy. Sometimes it is a little crunchy between us, and you bring something and I bring something, but neither one of us ever show up to that conversation and say, I do it because of this. We listen to each other and then we say, oh, I'm sorry that I made you feel that way. And let's unpack that. And let's look at, what were my actions and where was I coming from? It's very, very, very different. And I think that that's part of the conversation of avoidance, because I think sometimes our reasons override our capacity to show up and be take ownership for what we are, our position in the situation. And then that end case is avoiding that ownership. Your reasons oftentimes are allowing you to avoid the ownership of the situation. And without ownership, the situation never changes. Your excuse doesn't make it better for any party, including yourself.
There's a piece in there, I think, about avoiding intimacy with myself to honor my experience. So that idea of, because of this, then this, it's like, oh, and we all got the backstory, right? And there's some value to knowing the backstory. I'll often have my clients create a time map of their lives and look at what's been going on in your life, and what are these moments, these pivotal moments throughout your life, and what did you lock in, beliefs about you or values, experiences, energies. And so, yeah, we know ourselves, right? You do the work, you figure it out. And so, yes, there's avoidance. Yes, there's well, is it, it's not required. It's just some sort of distraction. It's not necessary. And underneath that, I think there's this piece of, are people willing to actually be intimate with themselves, to really fully see that which I am, which, yeah, I mean, I bring my life with me. This, I've had a life up to that, from when I was born on this planet, and even before then until now. And I get to choose how I relate to my life. And there might be experiences that were an unkindness or did not contribute or were completely pivoting me in another direction of my life. And acknowledging, I think, is an antidote to avoiding. If I'm willing to acknowledge my life and not let my lives previous up into this moment hold me into how I can create now, but just acknowledge that which I was, acknowledge that I've experienced, and everything I did or didn't do, blah, 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 acknowledge that, be intimate with me. So then I'm not attached to what I'm avoiding. And I'll give you an example. I mean, when I, people are like, well, what do you mean? When I was diagnosed having cancer when I was 13. And that's a whole story. And that freedom, to really, truly believe in my body's ability to heal itself, allow myself to let go of that story, not to dismiss it, but to no longer carry the weight of that story with me. Am I willing to not lose the fullness of me because I'm attached to my history. I'm going to say that again, like not lose the fullness of me now because I'm attached to history. And yes, people can say, well, history defines us. Okay. But it's not the be all end all. Like I get to create a whole new chapter of my life now. And I remember this moment where I wanted to just be healthy. And the only thing that was stopping me from being healthy was me avoiding that choice of like, I'm going to let my disease go. Well, who am I going to be? Who will I be if I'm not carrying my disease? I can be anything. But then everyone knows me as that, like the one who bloody, bloody, blah. But when I avoid the intimacy with me, I am monochrome. And I don't want a monochrome life. I want a Kodachrome life, baby. Like I'm prismatic colors. And so what is it that I'm attached to that I'm unwilling to let go of, that if I actually didn't avoid letting go of that attachment, I could totally have the freedom I'm asking for? So what are you attached to, folks? What are you avoiding? Like, what brilliance in your life are you avoiding because you're attached to who you think you were? I wonder.
I wonder as well. And share in the comments. Give us some feedback on this conversation. What are your thoughts? What do you think avoiding is? Do you think we hit the mark? Do you think we missed it? Do you have another spin on it? Do you have another perspective on it? Wide open. I want to hear about it. I want to know more about avoiding.
Don't avoid it. Drop us a comment. Do it now. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Thank you,
Love it.
Christine.
Can't
Same.
wait for more. Like it, share it, if you dare it. We'll see you guys later. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.